Hello, everybody out there in Facebook and YouTube land. This is Ellis Paul. I'm in Charlottesville, Virginia. Usually, I do an interview show on my traveling medicine show every Friday night, but I wanted today to be special because I'm interviewing a gentleman by the name of Bob Woldin. Bob is in his late 70s, and I met him through the New England Songwriters Retreat and through my shows in California. He's a fan of mine and has become a friend over time. And he's pretty extraordinary. His story is extraordinary. He was a school counselor for his career with a side job of performing songs, cover songs, writing songs that are original, and having a sideline as a musician. And recently, in the past few years, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. And the interplay between that disease and music is what we're going to be talking to Bob with. You're going to love his music. You're going to love his personality. This is Mr. Bob Woldin. I'm going to bring him in right now. Hello, Bob. How are you?
Just fine. This is a new experience for me, and I'm really excited.
You're looking great. Can you tell folks where you live and where you are right now? Let's just fill them in on where you're at.
My wife and I moved out here about 2002, not too long after 9/11, and we wound up in the town of Escondido, California, which is about a half an hour north of San Diego. Translated to whatever Indian language it is, it means Hidden Valley, which is what it used to be, but not anymore. Too many people.
And you're from New Jersey originally?
I'm a Jersey boy.
What town were you born in Jersey?
What town?
Yeah.
I grew up in a little tiny town called Bound Brook. And it was sort of like Ozzie and Harriet land, and only the old folks who see this are going to know who that was. But it was very peaceful, very calm. Bound Brook. And right in the middle of the state of New Jersey.
And over time, you started working in the school systems as a school counselor. Is that right?
Partially. I started teaching in the elementary grades, working with 5th and 6th graders, which was a lot of fun. And there's a whole other story connected with that. But this is what Parkinson's does to you. It causes you to lose your train of thought. But it was slow going at first. It took me a while to adjust to being out here on the left-hand coast. And but I gradually met other musicians, some of whom were really, really good, and they made me play better. And it's been pretty much a joyride with the music. Anybody who gets involved in playing out and performing knows that there are trials and tribulations. And I've met a few, but mostly it's been a good time standing up there playing what I feel like playing. I had a trio. At one point, it was populated by 2 incredible musicians, and that went on for quite some time.
Did you play in New Jersey when you were a school counselor? Were you playing at the same time back then?
I did. In fact, I played at the high school a couple times where I worked, and it was an amazing experience because the kids loved the music we played. We didn't play top 40. We didn't play big hits. We played a lot of songs that were obscure, and we played some of my original stuff. We were called the Lost Highway Ramblers.
Nice. And that was in New Jersey?
Yes.
Yeah.
Every once in a while I go back.
And so you were retired when you moved out here to California, right?
That's right. I'd been retired only a couple of years.
Well, before we dive into your story with Parkinson's, why don't you sing a little song for us, and I'll give you the screen yourself. Everybody, this is Mr. Bob Woldin. Enjoy him.
How about a little old-time rock and roll? This is called Party on Bourbon Street. Got written right after Hurricane Floyd, I think it was. The morning we left San Diego behind, heading for New Orleans with party on our minds. The plane touched down and landed like a shot. Nuts and bolts scattered everywhere and whatnot. The crowd started clapping when we pulled up to the gate. Survived a crash landing. We weren't even late. No, no. I flagged down a taxi driven by Miguel. He said he came from Haiti. It was a living hell, but he loved it in America. He said it was a gas. Politicians, though, were a pain in the ass. He couldn't find a house that he could afford, at least not one that came with a door. Oh yeah. Meanwhile, out in the Gulf, storm clouds start to gather. Things got pretty rough, but that didn't really matter. Party on Bourbon Street. We're looking for a place to buy a hurricane. All night long walking in the rain. Birthday's closing, it's time to evac. But I'm here to tell you, the hell with that. Tensions are building here in New Orleans. Hurricane party on Bourbon Street, oh yeah. Went looking for another place, find a hurricane. All night long walking in the rain. Floodgates are closing, it's time to evac. And I'm here to tell you, the hell with that. The tensions are building up in New Orleans. It's hurricane party on New Orleans, oh yeah. Meanwhile, out in the Gulf, storm clouds start to gather. Things were getting pretty rough, you know. That didn't really matter. Party on Bourbon Street. Well, the rain let up, the clouds moved on. Partygoers coming back from out of town. Guitars, tip jars in Jackson Square. It's like Isaac was never there. French partners building as well to do. Hurricane party on Bourbon Street, oh yeah. I said hurricane party in New Orleans. Hurricane party on Bourbon Street, oh yeah. I got a little loud, I'm afraid.
No, that was perfect. You know, that's the thing that I love about watching you play is I know the stuff that you're playing is pretty complicated on guitar. And it surprises me knowing your history with Parkinson's that your tempo is so clean, so direct, and your eye-to-hand coordination is so clean, and your pitch when you're singing is so direct that it baffles me that you're doing it. Well, in the background, there's this looming story of that you have Parkinson's, and so I'd like to hear, like, let's just start from the beginning. Like, when did you find out that you were, that you had Parkinson's, and what was that day like? And take me to the beginning.
Well, the beginning could go back to almost when I was born, because I always had this issue with the shakes, the trembling. Not a big deal, usually in cold weather and stuff like that. But it began to get worse. And I talked to my primary care physician, and he said he thought the problem was something called, I've forgotten the name, offensive tremors.
Yeah, essential tremors.
Essential tremors, my consultant back there. That's Rick, he's okay. Anyway, it was enough to make an appointment with a neurologist, and it was recommended that I take a DAT exam, and that's a machine that they hook up to your brain, well, actually to your head, and it measures the amount of dopamine that the brain is manufacturing. And if it doesn't reach a certain level, you've got a problem. And dopamine apparently, and I'm no expert and I'm not the scientist, but apparently dopamine is the key to driving a number of different functions in the human body. And if you don't get enough of it, you got a problem. And you might think, well, just shoot some into the vein, like, Clorox. But but that didn't work too well. And I said, well, why don't you just inject dopamine into the brain? And it's not that simple. There's a thing called the blood-brain barrier, which is, if you didn't have that, you wouldn't be around for very long. And it filters out all the bad stuff, and sometimes good stuff too. And dopamine cannot just be injected into you and sent to your brain. It's apparently a very complex process. They're working on it. Stem cell research is a big deal, at least I thought it was, and all that kind of thing. But for now, it's doing what we're doing the best we can.
And how long ago was that, Bob?
I don't have all my notable calendar dates in my head, especially the bad news ones. It's been about 3.5 years, I think.
And what are you seeing? I know you're probably taking some medication for this now, but what are the the symptoms of both the disease, and what are some of the drawbacks of the medication with symptoms? What are you seeing? Are you seeing changes in your day-to-day life because of Parkinson's?
Absolutely.
And what are they?
Oh, you made me stop and think about it. Well, the medication, you said you imagine there's 1 or 2 you have to take. I take 9.
Wow.
And that's not a record. Rick's nodding his head. That's not a record. And I take 3 or 4, well, anywhere from 3 to 6 pills at a given point during the day. And that's not, as I said, not unusual. Most folks wind up taking a lot of pills. Sometimes it's for the dopamine and something that'll replace it. It's something like levodopa.
Carbidopa.
Very important, and all that stuff. But one of the difficulties with Parkinson's in diagnosing it is that it can go from person to person, and the symptoms can vary quite a bit. Maybe just a little, maybe a whole lot. So it's hard to get a consistent picture of this is what happens to you when you get Parkinson's. If you're talking to one person, well, that's okay. That'll work. But once you get 2 or 3 or 4 people, well, I didn't have that problem. I had this problem, and I've noticed that since joining Tremclefs.
And how does the disease manifest itself in your life? I mean, obviously you're talking about the shakes, and you have some train of thought issues that can come and go. Are there any other things that you see?
When you bring it up that way, when I see, well, sometimes what I see is double vision. That's relatively new. Maybe about a year or so ago, we were in Jersey. I'm still driving, and I was going off to meet an old boyfriend of my daughter's. We still got along, even though they didn't. And before I got there, all of a sudden I'm looking and I see cars double vision, trucks, and I'm on an interstate highway, and it was pretty scary. So I managed to negotiate my way over to the right-hand lane. I got to the exit I was looking for anyway, got off and got to my daughter's ex's house. And he was great. He called back to my other daughter to inform her that I was in a jam and he was going to have to bring me home. But somebody was going to have to come and get the truck that I had driven out. You see, it gets complicated.
Yeah.
So, and it was scary. I didn't know what was going on. double vision. Sometimes people get that with Parkinson's, sometimes not, and all the other symptoms that go with it, the shakes. I'm very fortunate in that it's. You see that's pretty good. Well, that's the medication, and all of that. But it's also, I never really had it that bad. And one time I was on the phone to my stepson, my wife's boy, Tony, and I was describing what was going on. I said, it really hasn't stopped me from playing and all of that. And he says, so I guess you're pretty lucky having Parkinson's, huh? And we did exactly that. We started laughing, both of us, because no, it's not exactly lucky. It's just I'm glad it's not any worse than it is. So there's a single word that I think applies to a lot of situations that individuals have to cope with, and that word is acceptance. If you're going to fight the tide, don't drag me along with you because you're going down. You got to go with the tide. You have to be able to say, well, this is part of the deal. This is what I was dealt. It's sort of like joining a mafia, you know. This is the life I've chosen. And not exactly, but it's just difficult to talk about without making a joke about it.
Yeah, but it does bring up the acceptance comes up in my mind as the emotional side of the illness. And are there side effects with that? I mean, of course, you're carrying the weight of having it, which can bring about depression and those kind of things. But there's probably some chemical changes going on in your body, both from the medication and from the lack of dopamine and those things. And how are you holding up with all that?
Actually, not too bad.
Good.
One of the keys to treating Parkinson's is having a caregiver who cares. And my friend Rick, who's sitting here right beside me and keeping me from being stupid, is exactly that. He's not the one with Parkinson's, his wife is, but he's an incredible caregiver and at times inspires me to be better than what I am in accepting the care from my wife, who is incredible as well. But I look around when we go to meetings and such, and the people who are taking care of Parkinson's patients, many of whom are way beyond in the progression of the disease than I am, and their caregivers just don't quit.
Yeah.
They don't quit.
Good. And having the right caregivers, the right medical attention, the right circle of friends, community around you, as you've gotten with your group Tremclefs, which we'll get to in a little bit. How do you find that having Parkinson's and all the medication and all involved affects your music? How are you seeing it interplaying with your songwriting and your playing? And
I think it's kind of a couple of stages that I went through, and maybe this is the toughest part of what I've been dealing with, is the emotional side of things. For example, last night my wife asked me a question. I don't even remember what it was, but I started to answer it, and then I began to get very emotional. And I started stuttering because I couldn't think of what the next word was going to be, and so forth and so on. So she came over and she gave me a hug and said, that's okay. And then a few minutes later, everything was fine. I don't know where I'd be if I didn't have somebody like that taking care of business. I think the hardest thing for me to cope with have been the emotional issues. The tug of war that goes on in your brain when you're trying to deal with something like this. And lo and behold, you hear that music?
Hi there.
yeah,
It's currently 12 p.m. with a current temperature of 62 degrees Fahrenheit.
is that a
Today's
reminder
low
to
is
take your
53
pills?
And that's my reminder to take some pills. which I will do after we finish our gathering.
All right, don't forget, I'll remind you with a text. So obviously there's some emotional stuff, but do you see the Parkinson's restricting your playing, your eye-to-hand coordination?
Yes, it does.
Your lyrical memory, that kind of thing. Are you finding that it's a struggle at times to get through a song because of it?
Yes, it does. Yeah, memory and recall, I suspect, is a integral part of the Parkinson's problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm trying to do with it, because I'm technologically inept, it's been difficult, is develop a sort of, what do they call it? What is it when politicians use the screen to give their speeches?
Oh, teleprompter.
A teleprompter. So I have a tablet and an application and a little gizmo I can step on and advance the lyrics. So, but I've discovered that it needs to be practiced quite a bit because you're doing 2 or 3 things at the same time.
Yeah.
Stepping on a pedal, playing the guitar, trying to sing the song.
Right.
And I went, uh-oh, I don't think I'll be out in the public with this many times soon. So I need to spend time with that. But it's fun. I take my songs and hear them a little differently.
Well, what I love to see in what you're doing, Bob, is that your muscle memory on the guitar is so locked in, and that repeated, rehearsing, learning a song. You still have the ability to navigate through your Parkinson's in order to play the guitar as cleanly and precisely and professionally as you do. I mean, you're a great guitar player. Your tempo is steady. And all of those things just amaze me. So we've kind of talked now about how Parkinson's has affected your music, but how is your music affecting your Parkinson's? How is it helping you? What are the things that music does for you that makes you get through this in an easier way?
That's an easier question to answer. My first experience with performance on any kind of scale, I mean, I played sitting around a campfire playing Kumbaya and stuff like that, was in front of 500 high school kids. It was,
Tough audience.
I figured they would be. But I had been working as a guidance counselor there for a few years. And one of the other teachers also played guitar, sang, and of course we found each other. But she says, Bob, we gotta have some kind of thing for teachers here too, as well as the kids. Why don't we have a teacher-student talent show? I said, fine, I give you permission. And she said, oh yeah, there is the boss that we have to get, which we did. And there were several teachers that showed up to play in this talent show. The night before, we had a dress rehearsal. And all I was supposed to do was walk out on stage with my guitar, sit down in a chair, and play Mr. Bojangles. And that was it. So this was the night before. I walk out on stage, I sit down with my guitar, I get ready to start, and they turn a spotlight on, and I forget every single word.
Wow.
I went, So I mumbled for a couple seconds and then just found the chords the best I could and played the song the best I could, but I knew it was a train wreck. And I thought, well, that takes care of my performance career. And I walked off stage and my friend says, wow, that was great. That's the best I've ever heard you play that song. And I thought it was unrecognizable. But the thing that got me the most was that when I was finally done the next night, and I knew what was coming, so I was ready for the spotlight. I got through the song and played the last chord. I looked up, and it was dead silent. Not a peep, one clap, nothing. You could hear a pin drop. And I went, oh, geez. They didn't like it. I better get off stage. And I got up to leave, and the place burst into applause. And it was the first and one of the very few times I ever got a standing O.
Nice.
So I kind of do keep that in my memory banks. but that's what it was. Was there a short line in a Steve Miller song? Keep on keeping on, and if you gotta have that until you drop.
Yeah, there's something about.
And it's not easy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's something about getting clapped at that changes dopamine levels, serotonin levels, brings a rush. And there's something to be said too, and I think this is true, but let me know what you think, is memorizing chord changes, guitar positions, lyrics. Is that keeping your brain in the game?
I think so. I think if I didn't have something going on like this, and it's not all peaches and cream because it drives my wife crazy sometimes, but if I didn't have this, I'd be in big trouble.
Yeah, it gives purpose, right, to your day and to your loves.
It does, and I suddenly came to the realization that I got a lot of songs out there that are recorded. I could make an album, and my intent is not so much to make an album as it is to leave something behind that I'm proud of, and my kids are proud of. And well, you see what happens. I talk about my kids and my friends and everything. I get a little choked up, but that's what I hope to leave behind. I got some videos of us in the trio playing. I put that in there. I just have to find somebody that knows what they're doing with the technology.
Yeah, by the way, folks, if you're interested in checking out additional songs by Bob, he's got a few great videos on YouTube. You just put in Bob Woldin, and that'll lead you to it. This brings us up to, creating a community around your music, and you've joined with a group called the Tremclefs there in the San Diego area. This is their website below, but Bob, tell me the story of the Tremclefs and what they do and how they circle the wagons around you in the way they do.
I could do that, and if you want, I will, but I have somebody here that can do a lot more than I can about Tremclefs. I can talk about my experience. If you want more than that, Rick here is the answer. And it was recommended to me by, I think it was my neurologist, to find out about Tremclefs. That part of the experience kind of escapes me, but I knew from the first time I went to a rehearsal that this was for me. And I don't think it's for everybody. Mostly we're a bunch of old codgers, mostly. The music is a lot of show tunes. And it isn't all show tunes, but there's a lot of them. And
does everybody in the group have Parkinson's? I mean, is it
well?
What is the makeup? What is the makeup of the group?
It's mostly, at least the group I'm familiar with, it's mostly Parkinson's patients. But caregivers show up. Anybody can come and be part of the rehearsal.
Sure.
And if you like the music, and you can get that from the website, I believe. I think Matt posts that. Matt is the choir director, and he's very good, along with his accompanist and wife, Jerica, who is a great on the keyboards. Oops. Sorry about that, folks. Where was I?
Well, I think what this leads to, Bob, is just to say that, like anything regarding music, there's a list of benefits. And I think importantly, even outside of the idea that, you're joining a group that of people with a similar diagnosis as you, but you're creating community around yourself, which is the beautiful thing that music does. It creates community. And certainly anybody that goes through something like you're going through with Parkinson's, a group like the Tremclefs becomes just a support unit, right, around you, where not only are you getting caregivers, your wife, Rick, all these other people, but you're getting a group of like-minded people in a like-minded situation, and you're all holding hands through it. And I think there's a lot to be said for that.
There is that.
Music is, of course, it's an emotional art form. You get emotional playing it. You get to learn about life by dissecting these songs. You get all of the hand, and even holding a guitar against your chest is like an embrace of some sorts. There's a lot of healing components to music, but none are more important than the community aspect, and I think that's the beautiful thing about Tremclefs. I've left the website there down below for folks if they want to contribute to the group. Just go over to tremclefs.com and follow the page to the contribution area.
We can
Bob,
always use the money.
I'm going to take the Tremclefs down here and leave you for a song.
But can I add one more thing?
Oh, sure, of course.
I don't want you to be mad at me, because there's another organization that gave me exactly the same kind of thing that Tremclefs gave, and that's that feeling of belonging and all of that, and it's called the New England Songwriters Retreat.
Yeah, sure.
And it happens once a year at the end of the summer. Although the bug has gotten us in a corner right now, we'll be back.
Well, thanks for the plug there, guys. That's the retreat that Bob has attended for many years and is a sacred member of and an honored member of. I'm going to leave you to a song here, guys. This again is Mr. Bob Woldin out in California singing a song for us here. Enjoy.
This is a song that I stole the title from someone else. It's called You Gotta Suffer If You Want to Sing the Blues. When I woke up this morning, it was a bright sunny day. How was I to know the blues were heading my way? The last thing I remember was the roof caving in. The San Andreas fault line was on the move again. Falling from the wreckage, much to my surprise, Harley was still standing there, chrome shining in my eyes. And so I climbed aboard, trying to keep down the road I went. The wind blowing through my hair sure seemed heaven sent. One thing I can tell you, when there's nothing left to lose, you gotta suffer if you want to sing the blues. And dodging all the rock slides, I was flying free when I saw a girl by the roadside smiling at me. Well, I pulled up beside her and offered her a ride. She pulled a gun, said get off, and rode clean out of sight. She left me standing there as the rain began again. I've had worse things happen, but I can't remember when. I flagged down a pickup truck filled with good old boys. The toothless one behind the wheel said his name was Roy. One thing I can tell you, when there's nothing left to lose, you gotta suffer if you want to sing the blues. Roy asked me, hey, where you headed, boy? I said Frisco would be cool, or maybe down to Vegas and Hard Rock's guitar pool. But toothless Roy, he looked at me, a strange look in his eye. And so I jumped out on the 101, from there I waved goodbye. Walking past the phone booth, I dropped a quarter down the slot. I called my mom to pick me up, hoping she'd be on the spot. But she said, son, you never write or call me on the phone. And so this time I gotta say, boy, you're on your own. One thing I can tell you, when there's nothing left to lose, you gotta suffer if you want to sing the blues. You gotta suffer if you want to sing the blues. Oh yeah. Thank you very much.
Hey, Bob, great to have you here and have a talk and sit down chat with you.
Indeed.
And again, you guys, if you want to hear a little bit more of Bob Woldin, you can just click right there. Go Bob Woldin on YouTube. If you want to contribute to the Tremclefs, just tremclefs.com, easy to follow. And thanks for sharing your story with us, Bob. And I'll drop you a line here after the interview. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me on.
All right, cheers. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.